Hello and welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast. Look, guys, we got an awesome show lined out for you. We have a former Sandusky County Sheriff Kyle Overmyer that is joining us on the program, folks. This is the former top cop in Sandusky County, Ohio, who would ultimately become addicted to opioids as drugs and opioids, alcoholism. Folks, all of it. It does not discriminate. It doesn't care who you are. It can take you, and it can even lead you down the path to perhaps ending up in prison and turning in your badge for a prison number and a prison jumpsuit. But before we bring Kyle on,
hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
ladies and gentlemen, and now we are joined by Kyle Overmyer. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. You know, you were on the program a couple months ago. It was a really good show. And with so much going on in our country now with addiction and addiction crisis and all the stuff that's going on the southern border, everything's pouring through. It has never been easier to get your hands on horrifying drugs that will lead you directly to the gates of hell, that will ruin your career, your family, and you'll be digging a hole and you will just be sitting in that hole, and that's called death. Very quick way to the cemetery, if you will, with all the fentanyl and everything else that's pouring in through our country. There's been so many folks that have reached out to me over the last couple months saying, you know what, you really need to have the former sheriff on to do a Q&A with him. And really, it's something that we set up here over the last week. And, you have a tremendous story. And I think you have a lot of value that could be added to so many people out there that are suffering from addiction themselves. Or perhaps they just may have some questions that they would like, for someone of your stature to field, to see what your take is on a lot of things. Now, I did put this out this morning, and I have received a bunch of messages here and questions. I think about 10 so far that were either emailed to me or sent to my private box. So if you wouldn't mind, we can get started, folks. And if you're joining us, welcome to the show. We sincerely appreciate you joining us today. We're with former Sandusky County Sheriff Kyle Overmyer, who also served 4 years in prison for ultimately having an addiction problem, an opioid addiction problem that would land him in prison. Since he is now changed his life, he's been sober for over 8 years now, and he has a speaking. He's now a speaker. He has a speaking company. He goes and he speaks all over the country to different groups and recovering addicts and police departments. It's called Knockout Addiction, KO Addiction. If you have any questions, this is going to be a live Q&A. We are going to be interacting with you, the audience. So if you have anything that you want to ask the former sheriff, feel free. And I've got all my messages coming in here right now so I can see them all. So don't be shy. Feel free to reach out, and he will speak directly to you. If it has anything to do really with police, with addiction, with drugs, this guy's an open book, and he's ready to field your questions. And let's get started, Kyle. Now, our first question comes from John from Houston, Texas. Now, John says, did your conviction cause any side effects in regards to any of the criminals you put away? And was there any criticism as to how they were handled with you being under the influence of drugs?
There was no actual evidence to show that any of my addiction did have any effects on them at all. Of course, there were a lot of people that wanted to point fingers, people that were upset with me about the past, of the crimes they committed. And I think fully a lot of them just did not want to take responsibility, like myself. I took full responsibility for my criminal activity and my addiction. Like many people know, people run from their problems. And I feel a lot of the people that it was a handful that pointed fingers, they're still running from their problems. I guess I
Mhm.
could probably leave it at that. And as you well know, Brian, from knowing me and speaking with me prior, I take full responsibility for my criminal activity and my addiction and everything I've done in the past.
Mhm. Sure. Now, elaborate on the criminal activity aspect of being a sheriff, of being your county's top cop.
Well, what happened was, I was diagnosed with arthritis back in 2010. I was prescribed about 105 Vicodin, which is, your normal opiate that you're going to be prescribed. And as time went on, during my career in law enforcement, I struggled with some trauma, some traumatic events. And then I graduated to Percocets, which is a stronger and more effective opioid. And I went doctor shopping. I went as far as stealing from the take back box where the community would throw away the old medications that they no longer needed. Stole from my parents because they both have arthritis. And my daughter as well, when she would get her, when she got her wisdom teeth pulled. I lied, cheated, manipulated any way I could to feed my addiction. There's no bones about it. I don't hide from it, and I speak freely about it today, Brian.
Yeah, and I know you do. You do a very good job, and I know you're saving lives every single day in the work that you are doing because you are not afraid to put yourself out there, make yourself vulnerable, and that's not an easy walk. You're doing the hard work, and you could have easily folded in prison and gotten out and just become an outlaw, right?
Well,
But you didn't, and you're out there. You've got some callings that are far greater than yourself. And really at the end of the day, it's about saving lives. Folks, Brian Roof, what is up? Kimberly Moyers, Dakota, Amelia Collins, welcome to the program. Folks, if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot them here at the former sheriff, and I will be sure to ask them. Now, the next question comes from Columbus. Matthew from Columbus, Ohio. Managing your pain now has to be a slippery slope. How do you deal with it now?
A lot of it has to do with I do a multitude of things. I work out several times a week. I've got my diet under control. I have had some issues with my thyroid, and I was overweight, which was hard on my arthritis. I do not use any opioids or anything. The over-the-counter Tylenol from time to time. But one of the things that I work on myself to not, you know, relapse or trigger anything, I go and talk to somebody at least twice a month, and I go to therapy. And I have a great therapist who is actually in recovery himself, and he does an outstanding job. He keeps me vulnerable. He keeps me in check. And when I struggle at all, which we all still struggle regardless, recovery is a everyday job you have to work on. It's not like you get clean and then you say, okay, I'm going to forget about it. It's like a car. You got to keep maintaining it, get an oil change, rotate the tires. That's how I take care of my body now. And that's what's the way that I handle things to deal with my arthritis, any kind of mental health, and my addiction as well. I know it's a great question. Thank you very much, Matthew. That's a good one. And you got to have a shout out to OHIO here in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. Matthew from Columbus. I hope that was good to go there with that. And, I'm even going to touch a little bit on what Matthew said now. When it comes to treating your pain now, like you said, you talk to counselors, you go to therapy, you manage your diet, you work out, mind, body, spirit. You have to keep yourself in that right frame of mind, because people with addictions typically have addictive personalities. Would you agree with that? That it's and like
wholeheartedly, yes.
I mean, like addiction is a medical condition. I mean, right? Or is it a medical condition? A disease, if you will?
It is. It's, it's a medical, it's found to be a medical disease that people deal with. And I think a lot of people overlook that. And it's kind of a disease that never goes away. And that's why you must work on it each day. And I always say, Brian, there's no such thing in recovery as perfection, only progression. You got to progress every day and grow as a person, mentally, spiritually, physically, like you just mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, yeah, totally, man. I totally agree, man. And our next question is even coming in from Ohio, from Youngstown. Ray from Youngstown, Ohio. And he begins with, "Thank you for taking my question, sir. What name pops to mind when you mention Ohio politics? Former Ohio sheriffs, indictments, prison time." He goes on to say, "Some would say Jim Trafficant. That is an old school name in Ohio."
Very familiar.
Very. He goes on to say, "However, your name as well pops up as one of those similarities that he has when he saw your story. That's who he thought of." Now, as a lifelong Ohioan and a former constituent of former Mahoning County Sheriff Jim Trafficant, who would further go on to be the congressman as well in that district in Mahoning County, do you have any motivations or ambitions on running for elected office? And if so, explain.
That's a great question, and thank you for it. And I'm very familiar with the late Jim Trafficant, who did go to prison and then got back out, and he was actually, running for Congress again, and then ended up passing away. And to answer that question, I do have some ambition to actually possibly run again. I actually spoke about it with my wife this morning when we were getting around this morning as we woke up. And the reason for that is being on both sides now. I've been, I've ran a jail, and now I've been an inmate. So I've seen both sides, Brian. And what I've seen is there's some holes in the system. And a lot of times you see that many people just get thrown in jail or in prison, and it becomes a cycle. And why does it become a cycle? Well, there's got to be a problem if it becomes a cycle, but what's the problem? And I feel, since, I served 4 years in prison, there's 28 prisons in the state of Ohio. There's roughly 50,000 individuals just in prison, not jails, in the state of Ohio. That's the population. That's like the size of a county. I feel that about 70 to 80% of those individuals, including myself that was incarcerated, struggled with addiction and mental health. So if we were able to change some things in the system, we would not only be able to rehabilitate some of these good folks that could be amazing people, work, be productive, be good fathers, husbands, brothers, sons, and also save taxpayer dollars as well. It would be a win-win. And those are some of the things that I look at as prison reform and rehabilitation in our system in the state of Ohio to help our communities be a better one. So those are some of the ideas that I've thrown around, and I've had a couple people, more than a couple, actually hit me up and say, "Kyle, would you be interested in running again?" And I'm actually thinking about it. And I wouldn't give it 100%. I give it 110, Brian, because you know what? You know as well as I do, we live in one of the greatest countries in the world. And what a way to make it a better place is to give your whole heart and soul to make it a better place.
Now, I know you can only speak on behalf of Ohio because that's where you were ultimately locked up and confined for 4 years.
Correct.
Does the state of Ohio, do enough to rehabilitate their prisoners and their criminals to send them back out into society to live an honorable and life of contribution after their time in the pen?
No, I don't think so. I didn't have enough. I only did about one program. I went back and educated myself. I have a couple college degrees, but I went back. I mean, I was able to do that, but there's not enough of isolated and intense programs when it comes to especially the mental health side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, of course they're going to be given the medications, but they're not going to be given the therapy like they need. So they're going to get back out, get off their medications, and guess what? Commit crimes again. So,
Right. Yeah.
so all you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it for a temporary time. And then the Band-Aid falls off, and guess what? They go back.
Right.
So that last prison sentence didn't do anything except hold them up for a few years.
Yeah. They just reoffend and
Correct.
they're right back at it. It's Groundhog Day for the police officer. As you well know, you get, especially in today's day and age, you've got, so many people that are being, locked up and let out, And it's the same cop that's rearresting the same people over and over and over again. And at some point they're habitual, and it just doesn't ever seem to work. Did you see a lot of those folks in prison that just kept recommitting the same crime over and over and over and over again?
Well, not only in that, but also, when I was the sheriff myself, I can remember an inmate that actually when I started in corrections, road patrol, detective bureau, and up until I was sheriff, he was in there over 80 times in our facility. 80 times.
Yeah.
I mean, and guess what he struggled with? Mental health. So yeah, you see it, and you know what? It's a sad situation. And do I think that I should have gotten more mental health and addiction treatment? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had to come up with some different ideas for myself to help rehabilitate myself while I was incarcerated. So, because I did not want to go back, but I became very aware of my addiction and the disease that I struggled with. So I took it on myself.
Yeah. Only you can save you. I say that all the time. You have to want better. You have to hit rock bottom. Like I tell a lot of my friends and family is, rock bottom was the best, worst day of my life because it couldn't get worse than that. And then from there, it only got better. And that's when I decided to get 1% better, as you have to. You have to want to get better. And that's the first step always in any, recovery, process. Now, we do have a question right here from Brian Roof. How was your experience in jail being a former police officer? How were you treated in prison?
Well, of course, and we talked about this in the prior show that I was on a couple months ago. I was tried once, which I handled the business. I knew what to do because, with self-defense, I'm a former boxer, wrestler, that does happen. But after that, it sets the tone. People respected me because I was in there doing my time. I was very open and vocal about my recovery. I was offered drugs as soon as I got there. Everybody knew what my weakness was. But of course, I abstained from using any drugs while incarcerated. So I was pretty well respected. There were people I crossed paths with that were from my county that, I was involved with arresting. And you know what? They saw me as another inmate. They respected me. And you get in that inmate mode while you're in there. And it's really difficult as soon as you walk out those doors to turn off that switch and become not 692-183 anymore. You got to get to be Kyle Overmyer again, the new Kyle.
Yeah. Like I said, being the county's top cop, you traded in that coveted badge for inmate number 692-183. And, that right there that'll wake you up pretty quick. Especially you were a two-time elected county sheriff.
Yes, actually. And when I got indicted, I had just won the primary by 62% and was headed into the general election when I caught my 43 count indictment.
43 counts. So out of the 43, how many felonies are on your name right now?
12.
So you're a convicted felon times 12.
Correct.
And
currently.
Currently, as in it's not going to go up. It'll just come down.
You got it. Because eventually what I want to do, I'd like to expunge it. But regardless, Google will always have me as a convicted felon. And that's fine because that's part of my journey.
Yeah. It's, you can't erase the history, right? It's ultimately making you who you are. Correct. And you can't erase that part of your life, even though it was dark and it was frightening and it was, a very sad and scary time in your life. You can't ever forget it because it's going to mold you into the man you are today. And I see it every day in your posts and your family and your wife and your children and the happiness and the love and all that stuff. I see it's nothing but just, you could tell you really grew up, in prison, and you really grew up and you really found this other person, perhaps. I mean, you look back at when you were elected and you look back to that's two different guys. Two different guys. God put you on a completely different planet.
And I look back at those people. That's why I post those pictures of my past, because I don't even know that person anymore. That's why I'm so comfortable with posting those, Brian, because that's my past. And you know what? Sometimes history creates legacy. And like I always say, I'm not leaving behind a liability for my family, but a legacy. And that's what I'm trying to do each and every day now.
The next question is coming in from Kimberly Moyers. Now, she is a veterans advocate. And, of course, we have a lot of veterans that listen to the program. I know that you are not a veteran. However, your opinion does matter to a lot of people out there. You're a smart guy. You've seen both sides of the system. Like I said, any question that, here that is asked is all, just give the best shot you can. If you can answer it, cool. If not, we can pass. But she wants to know what your thoughts are of veterans that have been given and prescribed opioids through the VA when they actually have injuries. And then the VA cuts what they need because they are waiting for surgery. So do you think they feel addictions because of the wait for the surgery? So what she's saying is that a lot of the times in the VA will throw pills at you like they did me. I was on over 40 pills a day out of about 12 different pill bottles. And sometimes a lot of the doctors will be like, oh, you've been on them for too long and we're going to cut them. Or we're just going to keep loading you up until we get your surgery. Once your surgery is over, you're free and clear. And now you've kind of built up this sort of perhaps addiction. But she wants to know, do you think they feel addictions because of the wait for the surgery time?
I think that totally could. And I'll tell you, it sounds like a remedy to cause addiction. For one thing, so many veterans, and I have nothing but respect for veterans for serving our country. Of course, they don't get the respect they deserve, the money and what and being taken care of like they should after they get out of the military. But I believe that it can be a remedy because you know what? A lot of those veterans are struggling with trauma. And as well as I do, Brian, I've talked about it. They're struggling with trauma. And what's the best Band-Aid is opiates. So what it's going to do, it's going to trigger not only the trauma, but it's going to, it's going to ignite that fire in the addiction. So I really believe that it could cause trouble. I'm not a physician by any means. I'm not a doctor, but from my own experience, I think it could be a definite remedy for disaster and addiction, and they better be careful, cutting people off so quickly like that and not weaning them and doing the right things. It's bad. It's bad.
Agree. Again, it's setting them up to become an addict. And where does it lead from there? It'll lead to the streets. It'll lead to becoming one of the 22 a day of our veterans in this country. That's just an estimated low number that are tragically taking their lives. It's got to stop. There's so much that we can do better in this country. And it's as if we've kind of just pushed a lot of this off to the side. And that's why we are on here talking about the hard questions and the hard topics. And we're talking about life. Again, we're trying to add some value to the lives of everyday people through a guy who's seen it and done it and has lived to tell about it. Our next question is coming in from Woodland Park, Colorado. It's pretty cool. I graduated high school from Woodland Park, Colorado. Scott from Woodland Park, as a former police officer and recovering drug addict, what is your solution to this fentanyl crisis? And then he goes on to say that when he was a kid, high schoolers would experiment with marijuana and they'll have a joint here and there, but they didn't end up dead. Because of these drugs and, all this stuff that's coming, like I said, across the border. A lot of it is being laced with fentanyl. It's not the same drugs from the 70s and the 80s and the 60s, whatever it may be. These are different. and you have good kids that may experience one time and they die, and that's become a true and real epidemic that should scare every parent of any children, any parent in this country that has children. He just wants to know what your take is on this, and uh, like what would you do as a police officer? As a police officer, what is your solution to this fentanyl crisis?
Well, I think there's two points of battle. One is at the border, and I'm sure you agree with me on that, Brian. The border, letting everybody through, and that fentanyl's coming through. We know the cartel continues to change what is in that fentanyl, so the federal government here cannot keep up with, testing it and being able to detect it coming through the border. The next battle is at home. You need to take care of your kids and educate them as well, and that goes into the schools. The DARE program kind of crashed and burned a long time ago. We had it, here in the state of Ohio and that. But I think from the border where it's coming in and we know it, and we don't have enough police officers on the streets. They don't get paid as well, and everything is turned into their fault. Every time something goes wrong, they don't get the respect they deserve. So it prohibits them from, stop it on the streets. They're accused of harassing and doing all the wrong things. And then from there, at home, it starts at home to teach your kids the right and wrong about drugs and alcohol, because you know what? We don't know who inherited that disease, but if we educate and love and support our children, at least you're gonna put a notch in it, and slow it down. Yeah. So those are some of my ideas. Even though, of course, I got busted by police officers on this case, I got nothing but for love, boom, for first responders. I did this to myself. They didn't do it to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does start at home. Parents need to parent. And I was a DARE kid, and it worked for me. It scared the living shit out of me. I grew up in the 80s in Southern California, and the San Diego Police Department did a great job with me and my class when I went through that program in 5th grade. Yes, the DARE program. It worked for me. And then the crime dog, was it McGruff?
McGruff.
I mean, they scared the living crap out of me. I never touched a drug in my entire life, man. I did just something, but besides, the stuff that I've had prescribed to me, through doctors and prescriptions, and I'm on CBD and all that stuff now that is definitely working. And that's going to bring me to my next question from Canyon City, Colorado. Dan Francis says, what's your opinion on substituting THC or CBD for opioids? And if you have any knowledge from his opioid use on that.
I haven't done everything. I know CBD is a wide, scale thing. There's some with THC, without THC. And also I know, here in Ohio, many people have medical marijuana cards. And I guess in retrospect, I think it's the when it's prescribed by a physician, when it comes to the medical marijuana, I think it's the lesser of the two evils, definitely. And you don't see people turn into heroin like they do fentanyl. And if it can be used properly, and since it's been studied by physicians and approved by the government, I guess so be it. But like I said, I'm not a physician. But myself, I don't use it. I'm I guess just a sober guy and don't use anything. But I guess if it can be used properly, and live a good, healthy, positive life, then go for it.
Mm-hmm. I have an addictive personality as well. I can't take anything that's psychoactive. Now, when I was on all my pills, was I ever addicted to any of them? I don't know.
Right.
Because I was in so much pain. I really don't know. Now, I still need to take about anywhere between 12 to 16 pills a day just to get through the day. And that's just me. But that's great. That's leaps and bounds of, better than where I was. And I have a regiment down now, that is working for me. So again, everybody's different, but I couldn't see, a guy like you or a guy like me. Like I used to drink beer. I don't drink beer anymore because when I got sick, I quit it. I used to dip Copenhagen, and those were two things that I didn't really have on me. And I was like a functionally, drinking beer. I was a contractor, always hanging out with the guys after work, toolbox, whatever. Throwing some Copenhagen, go out and, cut grade or whatever it may be. I always had to dip in and typically almost had a beer in. But when I got sick, all that stuff went away and I never went back to it. And what was I addicted to it? Probably. Right. Yeah, I would say probably so. And again, if you reintroduce that back into my life, I don't know what would happen, but I don't want to try it. It's kind of like, well, you were an opioid addict. I would probably tell you not to try and smoke marijuana because that could pull you back.
Sure.
That could pull you back into a place that you don't want to go. So you say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to drink my coffee and I'm going to, I'm going to eat good and I'm going to do my exercising. I'm going to keep my mind right. That's just kind of like what I'm getting from you.
Yeah. It's about, having control over yourself and not having anything that alter your mind, basically.
Right. And like I said, CBD has done tremendous things for me. I could sleep again at night without having to take sleeping pills. Sleeping pills do tremendous harm to my body. They give me bad nightmares, and it's just like I'll wake up with palpitations and sweating. It's really weird. I can't even explain how bad those drugs are. But again, for years and years and years, that's the life I live. So now I can take, my CBD that has a little bit of THC in it, non-psychoactive. I could sleep. It does help a little bit with pain. It, instead of being at a 7, 8, 9, I'm at a 4, 5, I'm at a 5, 6. So again, it's not the cure all for anything, but it helps, it helps lead the way in a positive way that it is not going to damage the innards of my body any further than what they've already been damaged. And there's so many different cannabinoids that can be found in the plant that can be used as medicine. And there has been so much research and development on it. And again, that's what I'm really now advocating for in the VA, because we have a lot of veterans who are just like Kyle Overmyer, who are addicted to opioids. And again, this is a massive problem that we have going on in the United States of America. And it does not look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. That's why it takes men like you, courageous leaders, to stand up and look at this directly in the eyes and say, bring it on. KO, knockout, recovery. And that's what you're doing right now. You're speaking all over America and you're changing lives every single day. Now, this next question, Mike from Denver. Now, this guy, he's a big listener of 850 KOA, the 50,000 watt voice of the Rocky Mountain West. 850 KOA, man. They talk all that stuff, man. They talk politics, they talk sports. That is what they do at 850 KOA. And he says that he was disgusted. He heard a commercial on 850 KOA normalizing drug abuse. And he goes that they actually have a new pill coming out. It's not Narcan. He says it's some sort of pharmaceutical pill that you can carry now and that you can buy over the counter. So if you accidentally get fentanyl, you can take this drug. And again, he says the commercial was as if it was normalizing the use of meth and normalizing the use of heroin and cocaine. They refer to those drugs as, drugs of, when you're your casual drugs. And to me, those are hardcore drugs. I mean, your meth, your heroin, your cocaine.
They look at it recreational. I get it.
Yeah. And he's like, we're having commercials like this in Denver that is pretty much normalizing the use of this. And it says, oh yeah, if you get fentanyl, just take this and you'll be good. It's almost like promoting the use of opioids. And it's almost like promoting, like we have a lot of these cities, across America now that have safe injection sites to where you can come in and you can get your syringe and all that stuff. You can shoot up and you can walk out. Like, where are we at?
Right.
What do you, I mean, what do you have to say about having a pill that's so easily accessible and having the media really normalize a lot of this stuff?
I think when a case like something like that, I haven't heard about that yet. Those things enable the addiction and the disease. And you know what you need to do? Just be abstinent. Go get
Mhm.
treatment. Go get help. Then you won't need those kind of things. You won't have to take that chance to either a life or death experience. I've never done anything like that. I went the hard way of going cold turkey, wasn't allowed to get treatment. I went to prison. So I don't I think the best thing is don't use drugs. There you go. The old
Mhm.
dare thing, the old dare
Yeah.
motto. Say no to drugs.
It's just that we have so many people that aren't in the right frame of mind. Obviously, you are in the right frame of mind, so you're not going to go down that road.
No.
But somebody that's listening to that radio station is going to be listening to that and saying, see, look, there, it's okay if I do this because look, if something bad goes wrong, I've got a pill here now that,
Right.
everything will be fine. So I can go out there and I can, experiment with the marijuana and this and that all, and everything will be fine. I'll carry these pills and we'll be good to go. And it just seems so bass backwards to me. But
They're putting
again,
they're putting fentanyl in everything, Brian. You know that. I mean, it's getting in people's marijuana. It's everything. Down here in Columbus, Ohio, they had two college students. They thought they were getting Adderall, and it was fentanyl, and it killed them. So it's slipping into everything and anything. So,
mhm,
like I said, the best way, be abstinent.
sure. That's that that's great right there for sure. Let's see if we have any other questions coming in right now. Love the Dare program. Okay, so I don't have any there, but I have a ton more here. Now, the next one is Gene from Carlsbad. As a former sheriff, how would you handle today's court and judicial system when it comes to rearresting the same criminals over and over again with no justice or accountability from local DAs? That's a good question.
Well, I think you know what. Sometimes now, and in regards to the same ones over and over, I think some of these cases need to be kind of reevaluated and looked at. And okay, do they have any mental health? Any addiction issues? And that is where you can then turn around, instead of locking them away and throwing them away, get them the help and treatment that they need, because guess what, you won't have a reoccurring arrest then, you know
Mhm.
and I'm finding down here in Franklin County, I've been working with some of the courts down here and speaking on their dockets. They have a veterans court. They
Mhm.
have one for opioids. They have one for human trafficking. They have one for mental health. And they're doing a great job down here. Instead of throwing them away, putting them in a program and getting them the help they need and deserve. And guess what? They're being successful doing it. So those kind of ideas need to be implemented all across the country.
Right. Yeah, I'm a strong believer in Veterans Court. I actually spoke
Uh,
at one of the graduations at Veterans Court and talk about a second chance. Wow. I mean, and they're doing their job on actually rehabilitating folks who have had a bad day or a bad week or whatever it may be that led to an arrest, to give them a second chance at life to get that expunged.
Yes. So those are the kind of things I look at, reoccurring. They got to, reevaluate who they are, what they struggle with, and get them the help they need, instead of throwing them away and saying, you know what, I'll see you in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I think that question was probably more toward, we have, since 2020, let's face it, the country, the crimes has gone through the roof. It seems like it's been normalized in a lot of cities. A lot of cities are starting to fight back now because of big box retailers are beginning to leave a lot of these cities where a lot of the damage is being done. And it's as if uh, there has been no justice and no accountability for so many folks that are committing serious crimes. And, and they're just getting put back out on the street. And albeit, we have 350 million people, maybe, 375 million people now in this country. And there's a very small percentage of the people that are committing the crimes, but they're the same people that are always committing the crimes. And if they're not locked up, those numbers are going to continue to roll and roll and roll and roll. If you begin to put those people away in prison for quite some time, you're going to see those numbers drastically go down, because like I said, it's like less than 3% of our nation's population are the ones that are out committing the very, very serious crimes in our country, to include homicide, rape, burglary, all that stuff. So
No, I agree with you, Brian.
Boise, Doug from Boise. Man, I got a big following on my Spotify. Obviously, being in prison and apart from your family for so long was a struggle all in itself. But how did your family and friends handle it?
You found out who you're true friends with that didn't jump off the boat. The ones that believed in you and supported you stayed on. Today, like I said, I've talked about in the past, I did go through a divorce. I did not see my two children, my daughter and my son, for 4 years. Today, I couldn't even be closer to them. I talked to them every day while I was incarcerated, but they also saw the progress of their father continue to work on them, on me all the time. From the day I got there, from the day I've been out, and I continue to do it daily. So going to prison was the toughest part of it, was not seeing my children. That ripped away, because those 4 years of my life are gone. But today I look at it and I talk to my children about it. Those 4 years were an investment for me to be a better Kyle and to be a better father, be a better husband, and a community leader today. So if I had to give up 4 years instead of overdosing and dying, those 4 years were worth it for the separation from my family to be a better me.
I love it. 4-year investment. There's not a lot of people that would look at prison like that, but you explained that very, very well. As if you're a wordsmith. Man, did you pick up a book in prison too, man? Did you get a college degree in prison?
I have 2 college degrees prior to. I got an associate's in criminal justice, of course, and I have a bachelor's in business administration. And I went back and I wanted to learn about my disease of addiction. So now I finished out to have my CDCA, which is a chemical dependency counseling license. Then to tie it all together, I can be a licensed therapist now too.
Outstanding. And that's where the real healing is going to be happening, because there's so many folks that have had these perfect lives, and they graduate high school and they have these hopes and dreams of becoming a counselor, which is great, and there's nothing against that, but they have no real life experience. Then they go through college and then they get hired on, and they have a Kyle in front of them who is an opioid addict, and they are reading from a textbook on how to treat you. We all know that real life experience will trump anything that you're going to read back to somebody in a textbook, because you've been there. You've walked that walk. You've been in them dark alleys. You stole from the take back box. You know what it feels like to be addicted to something, to where it puts you on your knees and it keeps you there, and it completely changes the course of your life, unlike anything you could have ever seen coming or ever imagined. And then to be plastered all over the media, and to have your day in court in shackles, and then to get out of prison and go work for a fast food chicken joint and be made fun of, and you became the town meme. The former county sheriff is now working at, what was it? Chicken.
Lee's famous recipe chicken cooking.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of resilience there. I mean, that's tough. I mean, I don't care who you are. That's got to hurt, man. Yeah, but you're a bigger guy, man, because of it. And I don't mean that by your brute strength, even though you're freaking massive. I mean, you remind me of a pit bull, like, hey, don't get close to Kyle. He'll bite you. So Kimberly says, have you considered a presidential pardon? Now, I don't think that could happen, because he actually did commit the crime. I think pardons are more for people that may have not committed the crime. Is that how that would work?
I still can get a pardon from the governor, after 10 years, and I'm getting ready. I can get an expungement too, and have my record sealed within a year too. I have actually a close friend actually who has 4 prison numbers, who she is an amazing woman and has become a mentor to me that I've met. She's got a PhD now, and she has created her own nonprofit to help people here in the state of Ohio do that. So those are some things that I'm looking at, and if it happens, it's meant to happen. If not, I'm not going to stop, Brian. I'm going to keep rolling.
Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, I don't think you need it. Yeah, it'd be great if you got it, but I don't think it's going to change who you are as a man, and what what your mission is, and what you're doing every day when you show up to these talks. Like I said, you talk to so many people from different law enforcement agencies. You have such a great rapport. I mean, back when you were the county sheriff, you knew a lot of people, but probably 100 times more people now than you did when you were the county sheriff, and you were a very popular one back then.
I do, and that's interesting. I just told my wife that I've been out of prison now a little over 3 years. April 6th was my 3-year mark that I've been officially out, and I can't believe the amazing people that I've met and have reached out to me because of my story and because of what I'm doing. Brian, you and I wouldn't know each other if we didn't go through our struggles in life and end up here. So I always say, everybody's like, oh, you know what? This addiction was a curse, but it was actually a blessing. It was a blessing, guys, off of the disguise, and here it is. It's the best surprise of my life.
Love it, man. You're a motivator. You are a motivator. If I was with you right now, I'd squeeze your cheeks and give you a big old hug.
You know what? I wake up every day motivated. You know what I mean?
That's it, baby. Every day, man. Every day's a holiday, right?
It is. Every day's my birthday. That's the way I look at it.
Our next question's coming in from Houston, Texas, from the great state of Texas, from Dakota Moyers. He says, what do you think of organizations like NA and AA? I've attended meetings with family members, and they push the message that addicts are powerless to their addictions. They will always be addicts and will never fully recover. Do you push a message that gives addicts hope for a new life free from addiction?
Well, I spent a lot of hours in those rooms and with those brothers and sisters, especially in NA. That was my go-to because, I was an opioid addict. You got to always know, and I guess the way it's how you interpret those words. Being powerless and that. Yes, you are powerless because you got to know that there's a greater power than yourself. That's one of the biggest first things a lot of people struggle with. And it's one of the biggest boundaries to get clean, to know that you have a higher power. I don't care if it's God, Jesus Christ, Allah, who it is. Mine is God and Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian. So that was one of my big things that helped me get through my addiction. But those rooms, I think, help you relate and see each other grow and learn, not only learn about each other, but then you learn from each other. So it's a win-win. And I think it's all how you interpret when they speak those words, and then what you do with those words, how you act upon them. That's what you do. You don't only talk it, but you walk it. And that's what I try to do each day. But yeah, you got to always know in the back of your mind that, yeah, that addict's still there. He's still back there. But right now, this one right here, no, you're in front of him. You're in front of him. You're winning the race. And that's the way you got to look at it.
Sure. Yeah, it's mind over matter, and it's tough. Life is definitely not easy. It is hard, but yes, mind over matter, and just being disciplined and knowing, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I just need to hit rock bottom. I just need to know when that time's going to come. And folks, when you say, man, have I hit rock bottom? Oh, you'll know. you will know well, when that time comes, and when it does come, like I said, it was the best and the worst day of my life, because that's when I began again to get up, get out, and get 1% better, and carry on with the life and the legacy that I was intended to live through God, like you just said.
Yep. And the way I look at life now, though, life is simple, but people make it difficult. And you know who the person that makes it the most difficult? Yourself. It's
Mm.
handle each step of the way, and it's up to you. You're in control, you know. And there's a great poem out there. It's called Invictus, and the last two lines are so powerful. And it was the poem that I had kept in my prison cell, and I always had it. I am the master of my fate, the captain of my soul. You're in control. That's it.
Mm.
You got to handle your business, or your business is going to handle you. And I've
No,
got that in my head now, Brian.
that's man, that's some good prison stuff right there. If you don't handle your business, it's going to handle you, and you can say that about being locked up too.
It is. I mean, it's a true story, you
Yeah.
know, and you gotta understand that and kind of implement it in your life, you know. And I don't know. I just you know, a lot of people sit around blaming everybody else, but when it comes down to it, there's only one person to blame: yourself.
Yeah, yeah, it's you versus you. If you got a problem with anything, just look in the mirror,
You damn right.
and you're looking at the guy that can fix it. You're looking at the guy that can make it better. Don't look at anybody else. Don't look at anybody else's story. The only one that should matter is yours, because you know you can't pour from an empty cup.
Nope.
So you got to make sure that you're good to go. And once you're good to go, then you can start to open that cup and that bottle of water and start pouring in some of these other empty glasses to help others. But yeah, you're right. It is you versus you. Now, we have a question coming in from Kimberly. She says, how do you handle hard days? You know, because we all have hard days. How do you handle your hard days?
That's pretty simple. And I'm not here to be a preacher and get up on my back.
Good.
All right. No, I just figure you got to put it in his hands
Mhm.
and pray and got to move forward. There was times at the beginning of my prison sentence I laid around and slept and said, poor me, poor me. And then one day I was like, poor me. I'm only in prison. I'm not dead. I can turn this around. I can change. And
Mm.
it's all up to me. No, most human beings do not to get uncomfortable. Once I start feeling comfortable, Brian, I do something different to make myself uncomfortable. People will go to the same convenience store every morning, go get their I used to go get my polar pop every morning and pop a bunch of Percocets. That's how I used to start my day. I don't do that stuff anymore. I don't start my day the same way all the time, or I change things up along the way. I think change is good for people and it makes people grow. You can't
Mhm.
and get comfortable. You got to get uncomfortable, and then you know what? Something good will happen because you'll change and you'll evolve in life.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I can totally understand that. What's a day? What's a in that an average day in prison like?
Yeah, well, you pop the doors. You go to morning chow if you really want to go eat that garbage. But that and work out, hang out in the yard. I used to write a gratitude list every day. I did a lot of journaling. That was a lot of therapy to understand myself. And there's just a lot of downtime there. That's why the gangs are very prevalent. There's a lot of violence in there and drugs, because there's too much downtime. And sometimes what you need to do is imagine you're somewhere else, and that's how you get to pass the time.
Mhm.
I mean, I did a lot of that. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I would wonder what the outside world was doing. Of course, what are my
Mhm.
children doing? And I stopped looking at clocks. I don't even wear a watch anymore because I didn't like seeing how slow the time. But I used to walk around a track after I would work out. and there was this woods nearby. And what I started to understand is I was missing out on a lot on life on the outside with things that didn't cost a dime. I would start to see the leaves change, Brian, and those leaves would tell me 1 year is down, the next year is down. That became my clock. Nature and things in free that I was missing out on, I started to realize what the heck was wrong with me. I got so caught up in the fast life and everything else that I wasn't enjoying everything else. So those leaves changed and became my clock.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, that's a very different way to look at things, you know. Now, being who you were in prison, you know, you had said the gang, you know, they have gangs and they have all these groups and, you know, the drugs and, you know, there's problems and stuff like this. And of course, you were keeping your nose clean. You were in there to do your time, get out. You're doing all the positive stuff. Did other inmates look to you as a former county sheriff and now a guy who's in there who can be a model inmate, if you will? Did some of these bad folks, some of these criminals look to you for encouragement and guidance to want to change their life for the better and actually have a sit down with you and have a conversation that truly impacted their life?
A lot of them did. They started to gravitate towards me, you know, that were still in there getting high, struggling with things with their families. They'd want to sit down and chop it up on the, you know, side or out in the yard. And that was another way I started to look at these were things that I was going to do when I got out. And it also started to create my true purpose. You know, Brian, I thought being the sheriff, you know, the youngest sheriff in the state of Ohio at 34 years old, that was my pinnacle. And it's not. I still haven't found my pinnacle as well as you haven't yet. We keep growing and going up and up and up. And those kind of things started to make me realize, wait a minute, I got this all wrong. The sheriff thing wasn't it. I still haven't found it. And those were little hints that were showing me what I need to do with my life. And it was also encouragement for my recovery that I was doing the right thing.
Beautiful. Now, I like to end the program, and this has been great. It's gone so fast. But I always like to end the show. We got a quick question here coming in. If you were running for sheriff today, what would you want to fix?
Rehabilitation in the jail and prison systems. Pretty easy right there.
Yeah. So you would just be a 100% prison reform advocate. Because I mean, really, if you think about it, that is investing in America. I mean, that's no different than infrastructure. If we can take a bad guy or a bad woman and change them and change the way they think and completely erase that criminal activity mindset and give them a mind of gratitude and contribution, our country would be safer and there wouldn't be all this crime. So again, prison reform is so important. Again, it is no different than VA. It is no different than medical insurance. It is no different than, all the stuff that they are always talking about in Congress, foreign relations and the military and the DOD. I mean, dude, it's just as important because we have failed. The states have failed inmates who are incarcerated. Of course, they get incarcerated because of something that they did wrong. So it's not the state's fault that they went out and robbed a bank. However, I think it's the state's fault that they did not rehabilitate that bank robber and just continue to feed what the bank robber wants to hear. And then they get out and then they do it again and they go right back. It's almost like, hey, Nick, hey, Wade, what's up? Man, no, good to see you. It's been a couple of years. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. And he's back in prison. There needs to be rehabilitation again, because if they can rehabilitate, all it's going to do is it's going to just drive our economy. Everyone will be having a job again. Again, that life of contribution, and that right there, folks, is that's everything. That's in my eyes.
It's honestly business 101. It would actually not only make better people, but it would stimulate the economy too.
Yeah, sure, because they're out working.
Absolutely.
And they're not robbing. So
Correct.
They're out working, so they're paying their fair share of taxes. And when they're working and they're confident and things are going good, then they're going to go out and spend money to buy a house. They're going to buy a car. They're going to have a family. They're going to put their kids in sports and dances and gymnastics. And then all of a sudden, we're living in Mayberry again. And we don't got to look over the corner like this when we're pumping our gas, because we're going to live in a society now that is going to be more respectable and less violent. And right now we are living in some very, very violent times in the United States of America, and I don't see it letting up anytime soon. So I do pray for my country every single day, as I know you do as well. Now, I'd like to end the program always on a positive note, and I don't know if you have a story that stands out to you, perhaps a life experience from prison that you kind of took with you, something you learned and you've taken with you back to the outside.
Yeah, I'll tell you one. And I just said this to my wife the other day. I ran across an individual that was in there, and he was a great guy. And I was having a really tough day. I was moping around. And he came over to me and he says, "You know what, Kyle, I want to talk to you about something." I said, "What?" He says, "You're a good guy. You got so much to give back when you get out. And you know what? This isn't the end. I need to tell you about something." So he did. He told me when he got there, he was a former CO that got in trouble. And when he got in there, they'll take blood work and check you. And he was in the hole a couple days. I was in there about 30 days. They tried to separate us from the get-go. And he says, "You think you have it so bad right now. I want you to understand something." I went in and got blood work, and then the doctor called me back and he says, "Young man, I want to tell you something. You have some health issues." And he says, "What?" I'm a healthy guy. And he said, "You're HIV positive." And he was married, never cheated on his wife, nothing else. Well, here he had encountered an altercation with someone, and the guy was bleeding and he had an open wound. He said, "I had to turn around and tell my family and my wife that I was HIV and call home while I'm incarcerated and scare her that she then was infected as well." He said, "That disease could take away my life." He goes, "You have 4 years, Kyle. You don't have anything that's going to take away your life, just your time. So make the best of it." Brian, that changed the whole way I looked at life. He got something that just happened and then had to tell a family member, his wife, about it while he's incarcerated, some of the worst time of his life. And it's something that a disease that could ultimately kill him and his wife if she, was infected by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was a healthy man just doing time. And was something I took home with me to never forget.
There you go. There you go. You've been out for 3 years now. You're doing great things. I'm proud of you. I know your family is, your wife, all your friends, everybody that you surround yourself.
I think we froze up.